me my baby.
You said it was a boy.
Give me my baby! Get away from us!
In the quiet, desolate countryside of Scotland, a young couple's road trip turns into a nightmare after a sudden accident leaves them stranded. What begins as a desperate search for help leads them into the arms of a secluded family hiding unthinkable secrets. Soon, they realize that the matriarch who welcomed them is no savior. She's the architect of a terrifying plan. Trapped in an isolated farmhouse, cut off from escape, every moment becomes a fight for survival in a world ruled by madness and control. In this video, I will be recapping a 2018 thriller movie titled Matriarch. The film opens with a husband and wife on a journey. The pregnant wife, Rachel, is accompanied by her husband, Matt. Initially, their trip appears to be smooth and enjoyable until they encounter a road closure ahead. Following the directions for diverted traffic, Matt becomes distracted and inadvertently crashes into a fallen tree blocking the road. This mishap damages their vehicle, leaving them stranded on the outskirts of a forest, far from civilization. When Matt attempts to call for a tow truck, he realizes that his cell phone has no signal. Fortunately, he spots a farm approximately half a mile away. They decide to walk towards the farmhouse. On their way, they notice a sign indicating that the area is privately owned and off-limits. However, with no alternatives available, they proceed into the property. As they enter the farm area, they are confronted by a man in a car who admonishes them to leave. Despite Matt's explanation of their predicament, the man remains unyielding until he learns that Rachel is heavily pregnant with a boy. His demeanor shifts dramatically, and he becomes welcoming. The man's name is Bobby, and he informs his wife, Agnes, about their unexpected visitors. Initially hesitant, Agnes warms up to the situation upon hearing about Rachel's pregnancy and insists that Bobby bring them into their home. Matt and Rachel clarify that they only wish to borrow Bobby's cell phone and do not intend to impose. However, Bobby is eager to invite them inside, mentioning that a recent storm has damaged their telephone line and they are awaiting repairs. They accept Bobby's invitation and are escorted to his home. During their approach, Rachel notices a girl in a black dress watching her intently. Upon arriving at Bobby's house, they are welcomed by Agnes and her two sons, Luke and David. Agnes instructs her sons to retrieve the guests' bags before leading them to a room where they can spend the night. The couple is elated and finds it hard to believe they are receiving such hospitality, especially since their initial intention was merely to borrow a cell phone. However, they remain unaware that Agnes can overhear their conversation from outside the room. Rachel is taken aback when she spots the girl she had noticed earlier on their journey. When she informs Matt, her husband is unable to see anyone present. Subsequently, Matt and Rachel are invited to dinner with Agnes and her family. During the meal, Rachel notices a photograph of Agnes and Bobby with the girl she had previously seen, prompting her to inquire about the girl's identity. Agnes reveals that the girl is her youngest child, Faith, who is not present for dinner that evening. She explains that Faith, along with Luke and David, was adopted, as they have not been blessed with biological children. According to Agnes, God has a greater plan for her family. The atmosphere shifts unexpectedly when Bobby displays anger towards one of his sons. After dinner, Matt and Rachel return to their room, where Rachel begins to harbor suspicions about Agnes' family due to Faith's absence and the family's peculiar behavior. Consequently, Rachel urges Matt to leave the house the following morning. They soon realize that someone is eavesdropping on their conversation from outside the room. However, Matt finds no one there upon investigation. Noticing Rachel's fatigue, Matt encourages her to rest. The next morning, Rachel awakens to the sound of crying. Upon turning around, she discovers that Matt is missing. In a startling moment, she envisions Faith crying over her deceased parents and hears the girl introduce herself. It becomes apparent that this encounter was merely a dream. Rachel awakens and recalls that the girl's true name is Ellie Adams. She explains to Matt that Ellie Adams is the same girl whose entire family has been missing for months and featured in news reports. Rachel suspects that Agnes' family may be connected to this disappearance and could be responsible for the deaths of Ellie's parents. Feeling increasingly uneasy, she insists that they leave immediately. As they cautiously descend the stairs, they discover that the front door is locked. When Matt retrieves the key from the key box, it inadvertently falls to the floor. At that moment, Bobby appears unexpectedly behind them. Matt informs Bobby that he and Rachel will continue their journey on foot. However, Bobby remains silent. Just as they attempt to exit the house, they find Luke and David waiting outside with weapons in hand. David strikes Matt while Bobby attacks Rachel, causing both of them to lose consciousness. Rachel later awakens to find herself chained and inquires about Matt's whereabouts. Agnes ominously states that Matt is in a much better place now. Meanwhile, Luke and David are seen digging a grave where Matt is intended to be buried, having removed all of his clothing, including his underwear. As Luke prepares to kill the unconscious Matt, David intervenes, suggesting instead that they bury Matt alive. Luke then discards Matt's cigarettes and lighter into the coffin, remarking that he might need them upon waking. Meanwhile, Rachel is in labor, assisted by Agnes. Shortly thereafter, a baby girl is born, contrary to the expectation of a boy. Agnes takes the newborn outside, leaving an exhausted Rachel behind. Upon seeing Agnes depart, Rachel attempts to free her bound hands. Once she succeeds in loosening her restraints, Rachel seizes the hanging cross and feigns normalcy when Agnes returns. Frustrated, Rachel strikes Agnes. However, she is quickly overpowered as the others arrive. She is subsequently restrained again with cable ties around her wrists and ankles. At this juncture, Agnes confesses to having killed Faith's parents in the name of God, claiming to have rescued her adopted children from the influence of evil, which she believes has infected Rachel and other parents. After being gagged, Rachel is taken to a hay shed. Agnes also forcibly pumps Rachel's breast milk. Meanwhile, Matt regains consciousness and attempts to use his lighter for illumination. Disoriented and unaware of his surroundings, he inspects the loose side of the crate and discovers dirt outside. It dawns on him that he has been buried alive. Desperate to escape, he exerts all his strength to break through the crate's side and eventually emerges without any clothing. Wandering aimlessly in search of assistance, he finds himself alone and disoriented. Soon after, he encounters a waterfall where he cleans himself up and discovers a piece of cloth nearby, which he uses to cover his body. In contrast, Rachel continues her futile attempts to free herself from her chains and eventually falls asleep. Upon waking, she is presented with food and drink by Faith, also known as Ellie Adams. Rachel pleads with Ellie for help in finding something to aid her escape, but Ellie simply walks away. The scene shifts back to Matt, who is determined to locate the highway. He eventually stumbles upon two men camping and attempts to explain his situation to them. However, upon seeing his disheveled appearance, they assume he is intoxicated and hallucinating. Left with no other option, Matt engages the two men in a confrontation. Following the altercation, he takes their clothing and proposes a mutually beneficial arrangement. He offers them a knife to free him in exchange for guiding him to the highway. Meanwhile, Luke and David comes to see Agnes in Rachel's baby room. They know that Agnes is actually hoping for a boy, and offer her a solution in which Luke and David will have sex with Rachel. From that deed, Rachel will give birth to a boy, which is most likely God's plan for them. Agnes can't believe of what she has just heard, and chases them out of the room. Luke and David, who have never experienced such a thing before, finally decide to meet Rachel in the hay shed. As soon as Matt is able to return to the house, he is helped by Ellie to find Rachel's whereabouts. At the same time, Luke and David try to force Rachel into doing what he wants. Luckily, Matt arrives at the right time and beats them both to death with a pipe. Rachel is relieved to see that Matt is still alive. She informs him that their child has been born and that the child is a girl. Matt is happy after hearing this, and he uses his pipe to break Rachel's iron chains. Agnes, on the other hand, hears a knock from Matt's iron pipe, and Bobby checks it out immediately. We can see that Ellie is trying to attract Agnes' attention by smashing the glass there. When Rachel and Matt want to get out of the hay shed, they find that Bobby is already outside while holding his gun. Matt immediately covers Rachel and lets himself to be shot to death. Bobby then hits Rachel with his rifle, causing her to pass out. After that, Rachel is again tied up in the same place. When Rachel has regained consciousness, she sees Ellie attempting to free herself from the chains. She notices that Ellie has also been chained up along with her. While at home, Bobby sees that Agnes applying makeup to Luke and David. Agnes, who thinks that Luke and David are still alive, is advised by Bobby to let Luke and David go. They eventually bury Luke and David in the meadow, where there are 3 tomb crosses there. After mourning their deaths, Bobby tells Agnes to go home. But Agnes, who still can't let them go, tells Bobby to go home first. Meanwhile, Ellie and Rachel have finally managed to dismantle the bricks that are connected to the chains. They let go of the chains around their necks and hands, before going to Bobby and Agnes's house to pick up her baby. After she found her room, Rachel looks very happy to see her newborn. But not long after, Bobby has returned home. Rachel and Ellie have no other choice but to hide in the closet. After Bobby checks the baby's condition, he goes out of the room and brings the breast pump with him. But when he arrives at the hay shed, he finds out that Rachel is no longer there. So he immediately grabs his gun and returns to the house. However, this time Rachel doesn't want to hide anymore. She requests to breastfeed the baby directly rather than using a pump. Bobby consents to her request. However, it is revealed that Rachel is merely holding a cloth. In a swift motion, she fatally stabs Bobby with a knife. Following this, Rachel hastily retrieves Bobby's cell phone and calls the police. Unfortunately, Agnes arrives home simultaneously and becomes suspicious upon noticing that the key to the hay shed remains in the lock. She then takes Bobby's gun and waits for Rachel outside. Shortly thereafter, Agnes departs on a tractor. Meanwhile, Rachel and Ellie cautiously exit the house with Bobby's gun, only to discover that they cannot find the car keys. Unbeknownst to them, Agnes is monitoring their movements from a distance. She eventually approaches Rachel, forcing her to exit the car while keeping her gun trained on her, leaving Ellie with her baby momentarily. At this point, Rachel and Agnes engage in a shootout, though most of their shots miss their target. Despite sustaining gunshot wounds to her arms and legs, Rachel fights to prevent Agnes from taking her baby. Ultimately, Rachel overpowers Agnes by repeatedly striking her head against the ground. Afterward, Rachel and Ellie leave the house just as the police and ambulance arrive. The police officers and medical personnel attempt to inquire about their ordeal. However, Agnes, still alive, emerges from behind the ambulance and attempts to shoot Rachel. Fortunately, the police are alerted to her presence and quickly neutralize her. A police officer then asks about Ellie Adams, who had been previously reported by Rachel. At this moment, it becomes apparent that Ellie has mysteriously vanished. As the film concludes, Rachel realizes that the girl she encountered in the house earlier was not the real Ellie Adams. It is revealed that her attempts to escape were accompanied only by the apparition of the deceased Ellie. Furthermore, one of the 3 tomb crosses shown earlier is identified as belonging to Ellie Adams, who was actually named Faith Fairbairn. Following this revelation, Rachel and her baby are transported by ambulance to a nearby hospital. And with that, the film comes to an end. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.